everyone. So it's been a little while since I have done an IVF update, and I just wanted to update everybody. So I'm going to start with the report. So we got this report in the mail from our clinic that did our genetic testing, and the clinic that we dealt with is called Repro Genetics. They are based out of New Jersey. In the States. So if you're just new to our story, I'm actually Canadian, and we are dealing with the Calgary Regional Fertility Clinic in Calgary. And PGD testing and test creation and all of that of the embryo testing is only done in a few labs in the States. So that is why we went with Repro Genetics. So we got this really cool report. I'm not going to go through it too much, but as most of you know, we had 13 embryos that made it to day 5 and 6 blastocysts and were tested and biopsied and then frozen. So we waited for exactly 2 weeks to get our results from Repro Genetics, and our results came back that we had 4 embryos that were suitable for transfer out of our 13. So a little bit low, but still very happy with that number, as I know a lot of people doing PGD testing don't even get lucky enough to get 4. So what's really cool about this report is that they give us the report and they list every single embryo, and they tell us whether they had the gene that we carry, whether they're carriers, affected, or healthy, and then if they had chromosome problems or not, or if they were healthy. So it's just so crazy to read through this report and really see the results. So I'm really just going to show you this page. So if you see embryo 1 was affected and had normal chromosomes. Embryo 2 was, let's see, a carrier. So basically the way it works, I'll just kind of backtrack a little bit here, is everybody has 2 copies of each gene. So I have 2 copies of the short rib polydactyly gene. One of mine is healthy and one of mine is has a mutation. And then same with Dave, he has a healthy one and one that is not healthy or has a mutation. So when an egg fertilizes and those embryos start to split and the DNA splits, they will get 1 copy, one of my 2 and one of Dave's 2 genes. So when an embryo gets both copies of our bad gene, so my bad one and his bad one, they end up being affected like Liam, Nate, and Bria were. If they end up getting one of our bad genes and the other one's good gene, so if they got my bad gene and Dave's good gene, then that embryo or baby would be a carrier like Dave is or like I am, but be completely healthy and never know you even had anything or carried anything. If baby or embryo got my good gene and Dave's good gene, they would be considered healthy and not even a carrier because they have both good copies of the gene. So that's just a quick rundown of how that's the same for any autosomal recessive disorder. So cystic fibrosis, any of those types of things are also recessive. A lot of genetic conditions are. So that's where you get your 25% chance of the baby being affected. There's a 50% chance of baby being a carrier and a 25% chance of baby being healthy. Healthy as in not a carrier. So technically a 75% your carriers and your healthy are actually healthy. So out of our 4 embryos that we have with normal chromosomes that are not affected with short rib polydactyly, all 4 of our embryos are carriers. So it's unfortunate, but Dave and I are healthy. A carrier of any, just being a carrier of a condition does not really cause any problems. It more causes problems when you meet someone and have children with somebody who also has a mutation on that same gene. So we're hoping it never becomes an issue. But every single person has at least 4 to 5 gene mutations. It's just, you don't usually know what they are unless you happen to meet somebody with the same gene mutation. So it's really quite interesting and crazy what they can do, with PGD testing. So this testing is not cheap. It's not something you can just do. Some people do it just to do the chromosome testing. But by doing the single gene testing for short rib polydactyly and the chromosome testing, we more than doubled our cost of regular IVF. So a lot of people on here may be curious what it costs. So in Canadian dollars, with the with the chromosome testing and the single gene testing, it was about $13,000 Canadian, just for that, because of course we're dealing with a lab in the US, so we're paying in US dollars. So to Canadian, that turned out to be about just over double the cost of what a regular IVF cycle, because we also pay for the actual IVF on top of things, which was about $12,000. So yeah, just for anyone who's looking into it or thinking about it, if you carry a genetic condition, the price is probably different depending on your lab, but and if you're in the US or if you're in Canada. But for us, it was completely worth it, not just to do the single gene testing, but also to add on the chromosome testing, because if you can see, we only had the ones in gray, we had 4 embryos that were carriers, so they weren't affected with the gene, that had healthy chromosomes. We had two of our embryos that we had tested had both of our good genes, so they weren't even carriers, but both of those 2 had a chromosome issue. So it's very interesting to see. So our embryo number 3, 4, 6, and 10 are our healthy embryos that were hopefully going to transfer, and those will hopefully be our babies. It's really weird, I know, to think about. I mean, you know, I'm just grateful that we have the option to do this. The testing report that we get also shows us which each embryo, where the gene came from, or which one of us passed it down. So if I passed it down, if Dave passed it down, or if we both did, then that embryo was affected with the condition, which is really kind of cool and interesting to see. It was about even, for anybody wondering, with the number that I passed on and the number that Dave passed on. It was pretty much the same. Then we also have this report of testing, and this is your chromosomes. So you have 2 of each copy on a chromosome. You get a copy of the chromosome from your mom and a copy from your dad. So you should have 2 of each chromosome. And you can see here in our chromosome testing, there's the odd one that will show a 3. That means there was 3 chromosomes on that for that embryo. So that embryo likely would have miscarried very early. And there's most of these chromosome problems lead to very early miscarriages. Some will make it a little bit further and end up with a trisomy 13 or 18, which is generally fatal as well. So adding on the chromosome testing was a really big deal. So in the end, having my fresh cycle canceled was probably a blessing, because we did have 5 different embryos that had a chromosome problem. That kind of shocked me, but one thing that they did tell me is not to really worry about that, because they said we have to remember that we're taking an embryo on day 5 and biopsying it, which is so very early, that in a normal situation in your body, in a normal natural pregnancy, any of those embryos that had these chromosome problems, especially the couple that had multiple ones, those embryos likely would never have even made it to implant, or they wouldn't have implanted properly. And you know, you probably wouldn't have even ended up with a positive pregnancy test with a few of those. So it seems like we have a lot with chromosome issues, being that we had 5 out of 13. But in reality, you have to remember we're testing super early. And so it's not the same as it would be in a natural pregnancy. So that's just kind of going over the report, which was really interesting to read. Now, I'm sure you're all wondering when we will be having the transfer. We had to wait 2 full cycles, and they didn't count my period after the retrieval as my first one. So it was super annoying. They make you wait a really long time. But my body's taken a little bit longer, and I was a few weeks behind. So when I talked to my PGD doctor last, we were looking at the end of February that we were going to be waiting. So that would have been, I had my retrieval November 11th. So that would have been December, January, February, over 3 months. So 3.5 months almost before we would have been able to have the frozen transfer. But he said because my body was a little bit delayed, that I should have had enough time for my ovaries to get back down to a good size, since I did have hyperstimulated ovaries, about moderate. So he is letting me start Suprefact on Friday, which is 2 days from now. That is December 23rd. And we will be starting, I'll be starting all the meds in January, and now we are moving the transfer to the end of January. Actually, probably around January 23rd or so will be when our first frozen transfer is. So I'm super excited that we got to move it up a month, and now with Christmas coming up, and then we're going to Desert Hot Springs to see my aunt, who's probably watching this video. So hi, Auntie Cheryl, we'll see you soon. And then we're going to Vegas for 5 days, and then we're coming home. So by the time we get home in the middle of January, we're only home for about a week. Then we're back off to Calgary to have our little snow baby put in, and fingers crossed that everything goes well. So Suprefact is the nose spray that I have to take 5 times a day, starting on Friday. So that's a little bit annoying. I have lots of alarms going off, and then I have to start estrogen and for a while. And then I have to start progesterone, antibiotic, and I think there's also a type of prednisone and all of that stuff once it gets closer to the transfer. So I'll keep you updated, but for now, that is the plan. I'll be on Suprefact for a few weeks before I start estrogen. The estrase pills is what they are. So it's 2 pills twice a day. So that is more estrogen, and it helps to build your lining and get your body ready for the frozen transfer. One more thing that a lot of people have been asking me is, tons of people are saying, hey, are you putting in 1? Are you putting in 2? You know, it'd be really cool if you had twins. And unfortunately, it's a little bit more complicated with me because my body doesn't always react the way that it should. So as most of you know, after I lost Bria, my daughter, at 16 weeks back in May, after I delivered her, I found out I had placenta increta, which is a quite dangerous, especially if it were to go to a full-term pregnancy. And so now that I've had it before, I am at increased risk of getting it again, of course. So with that risk, on top of the fact that I have ulcerative colitis and the fact that I have that we carry a genetic condition that's fatal, and you know, we have just a lot of complications. I'm already really high risk, and then to add placenta accreta, or the possibility of getting it again, there's no doctor that would agree to put in 2. So they say, you know, 1 is risky enough, because if I do get placenta accreta again, then, you know, there's a chance in it ending up in a hysterectomy. If you start to hemorrhage, they need to save your life. So that's generally a lot of the times how it ends. We're going to hope that doesn't happen. I'm trying to stay positive, but I'm also very scared about getting it again. But I do understand why they won't risk putting in 2. They just said it's kind of playing with fire, and it's just too risky. There's no point in risking my life and kind of, you know, making it an even higher chance that I'll get accreta. If we put in 2, then we have kind of 2 placentas attaching, which increases my risk even more of getting it again. So it just wasn't worth it. We're going to do 1 at a time. Hope that, you know, this first frozen transfer takes. First, the embryo has to thaw properly. Then they'll transfer it, and it has to implant. And if that happens and I get a positive test, then we should have a good chance of, you know, things going well, because we have to remember these are tested embryos. We know they have normal chromosomes, and we know they don't carry the gene. So most early miscarriages come from a chromosome problem. You know, a lot of miscarriages happen between right away after you find out you're pregnant to, you know, 8 or 10 weeks, when baby's heart starts beating, or when the placenta starts to take over. And there's a lot of miscarriages that happen in that time, and a lot of times it's because of a chromosome problem. So we have eliminated that aspect of it. However, like with anything, it's not 100%, and neither is the single gene testing we had done for the short rib. So they said it's about 90% accurate, which I would like 100% more, but really it's better than what we had before. And we're hoping that they basically say that our 4 embryos are at very low risk of a chromosome problem or of having short rib. But of course, they can't say it's 100%. So I will still have to have early testing done at around 12 weeks back in Calgary. I'll have to have a CVS just to confirm that their testing was correct and that our baby is healthy. So I think that's about it. So I'm super excited that they moved it up and are allowing me to get started here in a couple days. So I don't have to wait a whole another month before I even start meds. It's still a long process. We're about 5 weeks away from transfer, and we're just hoping that this first frozen transfer works to give us a little bit of hope, because it's been a long 4 years. So if you're watching this before Christmas, it's the 21st today, I believe, and I just want to say have a wonderful Christmas. Thank you all for your support, for watching my videos, and for all of your love and all of the messages and the checking in and the questions. I really appreciate it, and I will keep you updated with what's to come. So have a great Christmas. Bye, guys.